Welcome to our March Madness bracket breakdown. It is arguably the most exciting time of the year for a sports fan, especially if you love basketball. And it all starts up tomorrow. And I feel like it's necessary to not only give some advice of what I think. I had UConn winning last year, and I take pride in not being cocky, but I take pride in knowing a lot about basketball, and I've had some success with this, and I want to share my knowledge on it, but not only on a few picks, not only on a couple sleepers or my favorites or betting advice or any of that. I want to go through every pick in the bracket quickly. This won't be some hour plus long episode, but I want to go through this because I think this year, unlike past years, is a wide open race. And I know going into March Madness, you're going to have those 11 or 12 seeds that make a sweet 16 that nobody expects. And you're going to have upsets, a 14 beating a 3, stuff like that. But for this year, I have noticed and I've realized watching college basketball throughout this entire year that everybody there's tiers. I think UConn and Houston, for example, is in tier 1. And I think there's a little bit of a gap there. And then you have the Purdue's of the world and Arizona, and Iowa State is now up in that tier, and Tennessee is right there. So I think UConn and Houston are both beatable. I think by no means do I think they're unbeatable, but I think you have to have those two as your favorites going into this. But there's a lot of storylines in this March Madness, as there always is. And I'm here to break it all down. If you guys are new here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe on YouTube if you're listening or watching over there. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to rate and review over there. We would really appreciate it. A 5-star over there helps us get around a little more. And you can follow us on all social media at A2Z_sports_talk, Instagram, TikTok, X. We are on all of those. So let's start with the number 1 overall seed, UConn. They are facing Stetson in the first round here, and I have obviously UConn moving on there. I will talk a little bit about UConn more in depth as the picks go on here, but those given picks, I don't really have to go in detail about that matchup. This next matchup, Florida Atlantic and Northwestern. This is a game, obviously, as an 8-9 seed matchup. It is a toss-up for me. Now, Florida Atlantic last year made it to the Final Four. They have pretty much all of those pieces back. And then you have Northwestern led by Boo Buie, and they made the tournament last year and are making it now for back-to-back seasons. So I think it really is a toss-up. Florida Atlantic's a team that a lot of people thought got seeded higher than what they should have been seeded. And Northwestern's a team that kind of just hung around all year long and found their way into the tournament here. Florida Atlantic losing to Temple in their conference tournament is a big loss there, and obviously they were ranked as high as in the top 10 at one point in the year. And I just think with that experience of being in a Final Four last year, you have all those pieces back. The March Madness tournament is something I feel like experience and discipline and like everything that comes with having that experience. I think that's really what just comes out. That experience in the tournament really pays dividends. And Northwestern making it last year, they lost in the first round. Florida Atlantic making a deep run, all those pieces being back, same coach, all that. That's what I'm leaning towards in that matchup. So I'm going Florida Atlantic with the win to move on to the second round. You have San Diego State, the 5 seed, against UAB, the 12 seed. Now, San Diego State, known for their defense, obviously shocked everybody last year, making a championship final run, losing to UConn in that championship game. And they lost some pieces. Jadon Lee is obviously an absolute dog, averaging over 21 points per game. And I think he's a difference maker here, right? I think in a lot of these games where some people may be picking upsets, I look at how good is your best player on these better teams, right? Like, so for example, UAB is their best player better than Jadon Lee? Do they have the pieces that can stop him? And I don't think they do. So I have San Diego State moving on to the second round, so no upsets so far. This next matchup, Auburn and Yale. Yale's had a couple quality wins this year, but this Auburn team, top 10 defensively, top 10 offensively. I said at the beginning of the show here that I picked UConn to win it all last year. They were a 4 seed. And I'm not foreshadowing anything here with Auburn, but I'm just saying last year I picked UConn to win because they were top 10 in defense and top 10 in offense. One of the, if not the only team last year, one of the very few last year that fit both of those categories. And this year, Auburn is the only team in the country that is top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense. I like Auburn in this matchup to move on. Still no upsets. This next matchup is my first upset of the tournament. Duquesne, the 11th seed, number 6, BYU. BYU, moving to the Big 12 this year, had a lot of success. Beat teams like Kansas and others. This Duquesne team is honestly didn't have a good resume at all. They got really hot at the end of the year. They won their conference tournament, and they're here. Now, they are led by a really good coach that was actually LeBron James's coach in high school. He has announced that this is going to be his last go-around. He announced that this past week. And they're led by 2 sharpshooters. Number 1, Day Grant is an absolute stud. These 2 guys are like not huge guards. I think 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", somewhere around there. But these guys are like NBA-style shot makers. They're extremely gifted, extremely talented. The one thing is they can get really cold at times, and that really hurts their whole squad because it's really them 2 and not a whole lot else, especially scoring-wise. Defensively, they're kind of middle of the pack there as well. And honestly, everything is pointing towards BYU winning this game. I am picking Duquesne. I watched more of them this past conference tournament go around, and I think those 2 guys are better than anything BYU has. BYU is very spread out when it comes to offensive production. So I like Duquesne in this matchup. BYU is obviously favored, and I would not be shocked at all if BYU ends up winning that one. The next matchup here, Illinois, the number 3 seed, number 14, Morehead State. I'm not going to stick around for this one a whole lot, or not real long, I should say. Illinois is very, very, very talented and have a lot of quality wins this year. And I have them winning that one pretty easily. Washington State, the 7 seed, number 10, Drake. Here's another slight upset. Now, Washington State has had a tremendous year. They are very balanced. They are very even when it comes to offensive production and defensive production. There's not a whole lot of disparity there. This Drake team, though, has the best player in the whole game, and I don't want to mess up his name, but I believe it's DeVries. He's the coach's kid, and dude gets over 21 points per game. They made the tournament last year, losing in the first round. I don't think they lose in the first round this year. I think he's a difference maker in this game. They also got a big boy down low that I think can cause some trouble for a Washington State team that's kind of undersized. I like Drake in this matchup to move on to the second round. Iowa State and South Dakota State. Iowa State is like the biggest trending pick right now in all of college basketball. They got so hot at the end of the regular season, winning their conference tournament against Houston in the championship, beating them by over 20. It was a extremely impressive run by Iowa State recently. They are 55th in offensive production and number 1 now in defensive production. I like them in this matchup. I don't think San Diego or South Dakota State holds a shot here. So I like Iowa State there. And we're going to go by region by region here. So we're going to stick in the East with the second round. We got UConn and FAU. I am moving with UConn in this one. Now FAU, like I said, experienced last year. They made the Final Four, and I just don't think they have enough to get it done this year. I like UConn in that matchup. They don't have a lot of answers for Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer in that matchup. San Diego State and Auburn. This is going to be an absolute dog fight, and you could go either way with this one. The 5 seed being San Diego State, the 4 seed being Auburn. I am really high on Auburn. I really am. And, that's a Yale team in the first round that could upset them. They really could. But this Auburn team being top 10 defensively, top 10 offensively, they're number 10 defense, number 4 offensively. They keep a top 60 tempo in all of college basketball, so they like to move it. And I just think they have enough depth to kind of wear down San Diego State. And they have bodies like Johnny Broome that they can throw at Lee to really disturb him there. I like Auburn in that matchup. Duquesne and Illinois. I think this one gets pretty ugly, personally. I think Illinois is that talented. I think they put a beating on Duquesne and move on in that matchup. Drake and Iowa State. I also think the same thing here. I think it's closer than that Duquesne-Illinois matchup, but I like Iowa State here. Their defense is way too good, and Drake I just don't think has enough firepower, and they haven't played enough high-quality teams. Iowa State, like, being in the Big 12, that is a huge advantage in this matchup. Drake being in a mid-major conference, the Missouri Valley Conference, I like Iowa State in this matchup. The Sweet 16, UConn and Auburn. Shock the world. I have Auburn beating UConn. I said it at the beginning. UConn is beatable. Now, not a lot of teams have done it. Only 3 teams all year long. They have been absolutely unbelievable. But this Auburn team is so deep. They play 10, even 11 guys at times. They don't have like a go-to guard. They have a couple guys that kind of fill in there. Johnny Broome is their go-to overall, and Jalen Williams, another big there. And UConn, I just believe this matchup is tough for them. I think UConn and just about every other team in the country. I mean, you can make a case for North Carolina, Houston, the top teams might beat them, but Auburn, I just have a lot of belief in, and I really believe they can get this done. I really like Bruce Pearl this year, and UConn. It's so hard not only to repeat as champions, but they are put in such a tough spot in the East here with so many talented teams. I mean, if they potentially have to face Iowa State instead of Auburn, or Illinois even, I mean, San Diego State, those teams would all give them a push. So I just think it's a tough bracket for them to come out of, tough region, and I just I have a lot of faith in Auburn. I really do. Now, Auburn hasn't played a whole lot of quality or beaten anybody super big, but I have a lot of faith, maybe even too much faith in Auburn this year. And then in the Elite Eight here, I have Auburn and Iowa State, and you guys have guessed it. I think that's going to be a lot like that Auburn-San Diego State matchup, where it's a gritty dogfight, but I like Auburn in that matchup. I think they have too much offense, actually, for Iowa State. Iowa State being so good defensively, being 55th in offense, that just worries me. And I said this kind of earlier where I don't like the huge disparity between offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. And I think Auburn being, again, like I said several times now, being top 10 in both, being even where they can play both styles of any game, I think that is a huge advantage. And I like Auburn to go to the Final Four out of the East region. Okay, moving on to the West region. If you're looking at your bracket, it's right below the East region. We have North Carolina, and what happened last night was Wagner, actually this evening, when I'm recording here. But Wagner got the win over Howard. Now, Wagner is one of the worst teams in the country. They were a bottom 6 in all of the country in offense. They don't hold a chance here. North Carolina will move on. Mississippi State and Michigan State, very interesting matchup. A lot of people believe both teams didn't even deserve to be in this tournament. I've seen that tossed around a lot. And the advantage here for me is Tom Izzo and just having that experience. And I don't think they have a huge deep run in them this year, but I think they have enough to get through to the second round and bye Mississippi State. The 5 seed in the West region is St. Mary's, winners of their conference this year, and then number 12 Grand Canyon. Now, this is one of those sexy, trendy picks that everybody is picking as an upset, and I am with everybody. I like number 12, Grand Canyon, to knock off number 5, St. Mary's. Grand Canyon likes to push the pace a little bit more than St. Mary's. And I think just the ability of Ray Harrison and I'm drawing a blank on the other star for Grand Canyon right now, but they have 2 legitimate guys that can get after it. The guy, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, transfer from KU. He's their number 1 go-to guy. And St. Mary's is just such a boring team to watch. And they had a lot of success after having a really slow start to the year. But I love Grand Canyon in this matchup. They can really shoot it, and I think they will move on to the second round. Number 4, Alabama. Number 13, Charleston. This is one of the most must-watch games of the first round. These are 2 teams that are top 10. Both of them are in offensive efficiency. These two teams can really light it up. I think both of them score over 80 points. Both don't really care about defense too much, and I think Alabama just has too much firepower. Mark Sears is the star in this matchup. Charleston is on a roll, though, but I like Alabama in that matchup. Number 6, Clemson. Number 11, New Mexico State. Watching the bracket selection show, I didn't want these two teams near each other in the bracket, let alone facing each other. I think this is such a toss-up, man. I think both teams, you can make a case, could make a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 in this side of the bracket. The best player in this game is PJ Hall for Clemson. Not the best guard is Gerard, but I love him because of his experience playing for Syracuse and making that deep run a couple years ago with Buddy Boeheim. He's a transfer there. New Mexico is just red hot right now. And if you would have told me Clemson or New Mexico, if you would have asked me that matchup in December, I would have said Clemson without a doubt because they were a top 15 team in the country and really trending well. And then they got a really bad rough patch there in the ACC. And New Mexico, who also were a top 25 team, and then they fell out of the top 25, and they got red hot and won their conference tournament. A lot of people think they should not be 11 seed. They should be a play-in, one of those first 4 games. I think they're underseeded, in my opinion. I think they're higher than 11 seed. With that being said, I like their depth. I like that they have 3 guards that can really score it. I like that they have a big and Junior Joseph. I am going New Mexico in this matchup, and I think that matchup to watch there within this game is Junior Joseph, Nelly Junior Joseph, and PJ Hall, 2 big bodies. And I think the guards are enough for New Mexico to move on to the round of 32. Baylor and Colgate. Not going to stay here very long either. I like Baylor in this matchup. Colgate, really weak conference, didn't play anybody this year. Baylor being in the Big 12. Self-explanatory. Baylor's moving on. Dayton and Nevada. I was really high on Dayton all year long. Their big guy Holmes is an absolute stud. Over 20 points a game, over 8 rebounds a game. He does a little bit of everything. Can pass the ball well, can get steals, gets blocks. But besides him, there's a little bit of a drop off there. Nevada is very deep. Blackshear and Jared Lucas are their go-to guys, and I love experience in the tournament. And Jared Lucas here was in the tournament a couple of years ago with Oregon State when they made that long run, I believe even to the Elite 8. So I like Nevada in this matchup, and I think they have enough bigs to kind of make it difficult for Holmes. So I like Nevada in that matchup. Arizona and Long Beach State. I think Arizona wins this one over Long Beach State pretty easily, but we shall see how far Arizona goes in this tournament. North Carolina and Michigan State in the round of 32. I like North Carolina in this matchup. I said in that Michigan State Mississippi State matchup, I do not have I don't foresee a Michigan State deep run in the tournament happening this year. I like North Carolina to move on. RJ Davis, Baycott, Harrison Ingram, like these guys are very, very good. The only thing with Carolina that worries me is their depth. Grand Canyon and Alabama. And I kind of misspoke earlier because Grand Canyon is not super fast in tempo. Alabama is. And so this is a very interesting matchup. And I think Grand Canyon has enough to slow them down. And Ray Harrison versus Mark Sears is the matchup in this one. And I think they kind of cancel each other out in that one. And I think Grand Canyon has enough to get it done. I like Grand Canyon going to the Sweet 16 versus North Carolina. New Mexico and Baylor. Two teams, I wouldn't say trending in opposite directions, but New Mexico is such on a heater right now, and they have such, I mentioned it with Nelly Joseph and House and Donovan Dent. They have guards that can really light it up, and they're top 50 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Baylor likes to push the pace. New Mexico likes to push the pace. I like New Mexico in this matchup. I love senior guards with their experience in the tournament and just overall being senior guards in this tournament. Now, Ray J. Dennis is a senior guard for Baylor, and Jacoby Walter is just an absolute stud NBA prospect. But I do like New Mexico in this matchup. So that's another huge upset. Another upset I have right here is Nevada versus Arizona. I have Nevada beating Arizona. It's Caleb Love and who else is going to show up there? I foresee a game here in this tournament. If it's not this matchup, I think it's going to be later, where Caleb Love goes really cold from the field and they don't have enough to make up for it. I just foresee that happening, and I think Nevada has enough to kind of be pesky here and make it difficult for them. I like Nevada going to the Sweet 16. Okay. North Carolina and Grand Canyon. This is where I think the run ends for Grand Canyon. I have North Carolina going to the Elite 8. And then New Mexico and Nevada in the Sweet 16. Who would have thought the 11 seed versus the 10 seed? And I'm really high on the Lobos, man. I think New Mexico keeps it going to the Elite Eight. And then in that Elite Eight matchup in the West region, I have North Carolina and New Mexico. And this is where I think New Mexico, their run ends, and North Carolina, even though they have a lot of depth issues, I think they end up in the Final Four. So as of right now in the East, Auburn is in the Final Four, and in the West, North Carolina is in the Final Four. Okay, now moving on to the right side of your bracket, if you're looking at it, the South region. Starting off with Houston and Longwood. Houston is so good. 2 senior guards and LJ Cryer and Jamal Sheed, and they're not huge. Like, they don't have a lot of size, but I think they can go really far in this tournament. Very, very defensive minded. Number 2 in defensive efficiency. Number 17 in offensive efficiency. I like Houston in that matchup, obviously. Nebraska and Texas A&M is a matchup. One of the 3 matchups in this entire tournament that I have been going back and forth. And I have finally settled on Nebraska after looking at it way too long. Tominaga is the difference maker here. Him and Wade Taylor is going to be must-watch TV. And I think Nebraska has too much size and too much shooting ability for a Texas A&M team that has the talent to win this game and potentially push Houston even with Wade Taylor. And I cannot remember the other guard's name off the top of my head. It's not Blackshear, but they have a lot of talent, but they're all or nothing. And I just don't love that in that matchup, even though I really do think they could even make a Sweet 16 run. So I am going Nebraska in that one of my must-watch games for sure, and that is on Friday, I believe around 5 o'clock, something like that. So I will be definitely tuning in to all of the games, but I will be very much looking forward to that one. Wisconsin and James Madison. This is a game where the number 12, James Madison, has been probably the most popular upset pick, and I'm just not leaning that way. I think Chucky Hepburn is absolutely on a roll right now defensively, just mauling guys on the court. JT Storr has been great for them as well, over 16 points per game, and they have size in Crowell, and I just think that Wisconsin will win this matchup over James Madison. They've also been playing very well at the end of the season here. Duke and Vermont. It's almost it's almost something I kind of thought about for a while with Vermont beating Duke, but I just don't see it happening. Vermont very, very, very good defensively, very, very, very bad offensively, and Duke top 30 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. I like Duke in that matchup, and I actually like Duke a lot in this tournament. NC State, the miracle run of NC State winning their conference championship at the end of the year to get in against a Texas Tech team that has obviously been grinding it out in the Big 12, and I just think DJ Horn and DJ Burns, the 2 DJs, get it done for NC State in this matchup, and I just don't think Tech, them being undersized, I don't think they have a matchup for DJ Burns down low. And I think the big fella has himself a day, and NC State moves on to the second round. Kentucky and Oakland. This is one of my most confident picks in this whole bracket here, in the whole tournament. I like Kentucky easily in this one. I think that's one of my most confident non-1 seed picks in the entire tournament. Kentucky moving on. Florida versus the winner of Boise State and Colorado. That'll be happening tonight, whenever you're listening to this. I think all 3 teams potentially here could move on. And I think all 3 teams could potentially push Marquette or Western Kentucky. I really do. And Florida losing their big man, kind of an overrated loss when you think about what they have there. Walter Clayton and Poulin are like the studs there, the guards that can really get after it. And then you have Tyrese Samuel, who's a big guy, getting 14 and 8 a game for you. I think he's about 6'10". So they did not lose a whole lot, and I've watched them a lot this year, and I really like what they got going on. So even if Colorado wins, I think Colorado will beat Boise State. Either way, I do think Colorado provides a bigger threat to Florida, but I like Florida to move on. And then Marquette and Western Kentucky. If you want to pick a 15 seed in this tournament, a 15 seed is 1. each of the last 3 tournaments against a 2 seed in the first round, I would pick this one. If I had to pick one 15 seed to beat a 2 in this year's tournament, I would pick Western Kentucky to beat Marquette. Now, I think it's going to be a very close game. I do. I think Marquette getting Tyler Kolek back do move on in this one, but I think they're sweating it there for a while. So I do have them moving forward. All right. Let's stay in the South here. Houston and Nebraska. I think Houston has too much. I think the guards and their defensive ability make it really difficult for Tominaga and the rest of that Nebraska offense. And I have Houston beating Nebraska to go to the Sweet 16. Wisconsin and Duke. Jeremy Roach being a senior guard in this matchup is a huge difference maker. And I just think Jared McCain has been so good. And I think Filipowski is a tough match for Wisconsin to keep up. Wisconsin not very good defensively, which is kind of not it's been their calling card these last few years for a long time now, actually. I think Duke moves on in this one. NC State and Kentucky. This is where I think the run ends for NC State. Kentucky's so good offensively, even though they don't really guard much. I do think they have enough to move on here. That is a kind of a tough matchup, though, because they don't have a traditional big to hold DJ Burns. And that might be pretty difficult. Now, they do have guards that can really get after it. And I just think there's going to be a lot of points in that one. And I think Kentucky can outscore NC State. I got Kentucky moving on to the Sweet 16. Florida and Marquette. Upset. The number 2 Marquette Golden Eagles will go down to the Florida Gators. I think Walter Clayton is the difference maker in this one. I think he really puts his name on the map in this tournament. This dude is so good. And I don't know if that Tyler Kolek being gone for 5 games is a huge difference maker for them or a huge disadvantage or anything like that. But I do like Florida in this matchup. I think Igador, I forgot how to pronounce his name, the big guy for Marquette. I think Tyrese Samuel can provide like a even match for him. And I like Florida to move on. So in the Sweet 16 in the South region, I have Houston and Duke. This is where I think the run ends for Duke. I think they make a Sweet 16, but I think if they are to beat Houston, it's because Filipowski just had himself a day. I just think the young guards of Tyrese Proctor being a sophomore, Jeremy Roach is a senior, but then you have Jared McCain as a freshman. I think LJ Cryer and Jamal Sheed could have themselves a day. Like I said, Filipowski is a tough match for Houston, but Houston made Hunter Dickinson look bad a few weeks ago. So I like Houston to move on here in a close one, though. And then you got Kentucky and Florida. 2 SEC teams, and I like Florida to knock off Kentucky. Florida is a little bit better, and I say a little bit, I mean a little bit better defensively. And like I said, I just have a feeling Walter Clayton is going to have one of those like Buddy Hield type tournament runs where he kind of puts his name on the map as an absolute stud. They don't turn the ball over much. They can shoot the ball well from 3. They can work it inside as well. I like Florida a lot in this tournament. So the Elite 8 in the South region, I have Houston versus Florida. And this is where I think, as much as I have been really high on the number 7 seed Florida, I think Houston makes a Final Four in the South region. Really high on those guards. And I think they have just that tough mentality to really get it done in this tournament. And it's about time. They they made a Final Four before, but in the past couple of years, but I have a good feeling about Houston in this tournament. Okay, our final region is the Midwest region, the bottom right side of your bracket. We have Purdue looking to get the revenge. They're on the revenge tour here against the winner of Montana State and Grambling State. I have Purdue, obviously, moving on to this one. But how far? How far can Purdue make it? Utah State and TCU. That is a game I will be losing sleep over all the way up into the tournament and potentially even after the game's over. Utah State has a big guy named Great Agabor, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's from England, and he gets 18 and 9 a game. They have Martinez who's a guard. He can shoot. They have Darius Brown, who's a really phenomenal guard as well. Utah State is a very good team and a very good Mountain West Conference that is underrated and got kind of gypped in this tournament, in my opinion. TCU, we know them very well, obviously being in the Big 12. I think the difference in this game for me is that TCU, their leading scorer is Emmanuel Miller, and he was like their third option when you came to Mike Miles and Eddie Lampkin these last couple of years. I don't think he's that like stud in this matchup, but I think great Agabor, however you pronounce his name, I think he has himself a day in this one. I think the guards are too much for TCU as well. TCU is ranked higher, not in this tournament. They are the 9 seed. Utah State's the 8 seed. But if you look at KenPom, TCU is ranked higher. I am going with Utah State, but like I said, it is as close to a 50-50 matchup as I've seen in the tournament for a very long time. Gonzaga, my Zags, going up against McNeese State. McNeese State going into the selection show, I said, I think I might pick them to upset somebody. I think they're so good. I mean, they're so good offensively. But I think Gonzaga has enough here. And you're going to, a lot of people probably will look at this and think I'm doing some kind of homer pick. But I do think Gonzaga has enough here. We've really clicked to end of the year. And I don't think McNeese has a matchup for Graham Ike. And I think Ike has himself a very good game. The key for Gonzaga to make a deep run in this tournament is not Ryan Nembhard, is not Graham Ike, is not Ben Gregg, is not Anton Watson. It is Nolan Hickman. Nolan Hickman last year in the tournament was absolutely awful, and it cost them potentially a deeper run than what they had. Nolan Hickman has to shoot the ball well in this tournament, and having Nembhard be the lead ball handler last year was Rasir Bolton. He's kind of put in that same spot where they need him to knock down shots when it's needed, especially without what was going to be our shooter this year. Steele Venters going down in the offseason was a huge blow. Dusty Stromer is not going to light it up. Anton Watson's not going to light it up. Ike's great inside and can shoot the three every once in a while, but he's not going to light it up. And I don't want Nembhard to be just that one guy we need to make shots because he's kind of setting the table for everybody else. Nolan Hickman has to be the guy, and Ben Gregg is obviously the energy guy. Nolan Hickman needs to be the guy that lights it up from deep. And if he does that, Gonzaga can beat anybody. They really can. They really can. We don't have a whole lot of size, but Braden Huff off the bench is a good piece. And Dusty Stromer can cause some chaos for anybody defensively. Kansas and Samford. Oh, man. You almost have to feel for Kansas. You obviously lost McCullough and Dickinson the last couple games of the year. Kind of saving up for this tournament. We thought they were going to get both of them in the tournament healthy and ready to go, and that is not the case. Hunter Dickinson will be good to go, but McCullough is out for at least this game. And it's a bad game to be out for because Samford can absolutely score the basketball with just about anybody. They have 4 guys that shoot over 40% from 3, and I think Samford, and they have enough size. I should say that. They have enough size to kind of slow down Hunter Dickinson. If they play enough defense in this matchup, Samford will win this game. Now, I am picking Samford to move on over Kansas, and the biggest reason for that is I don't know where the scoring is going to come if Hunter Dickinson struggles for Kansas, because KJ Adams as your number 2 scorer is a tough call. It's a tough call. And Johnny Furphy and DeJuan Harris, I just don't think they have enough scoring without McCullough. And I think Samford being able to score it so well. Now, if Samford shoots the ball really poorly, Kansas will win this game easily, even without McCullough. But I think Samford, based on what they've done all year, are going to shoot the ball well. And I think they move on to the round of 32. Oregon and South Carolina. Oregon, the 11 seed. South Carolina, the 6 seed. Another very trendy pick, and I'm with everybody. I like Oregon in this matchup. They got really hot at the end of the season, and the disparity between their offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency is very close. I like Oregon to knock off South Carolina, which has had a really good year. But besides Michi Johnson, and Michi Johnson's a great player, but he's kind of that hot or cold type player too. But besides him, they don't have a whole lot of offensive ability. And Oregon, with their big guy Dante, and I cannot remember the guard's name off the top of my head now either. The young guard that they have averaging 15 points per game. I think it's a tough call. And Oregon has a lot of size to them. So I like Oregon in that matchup. Number 3, Creighton. Number 14, Akron. Akron winning their conference championship against Kent State on one of the craziest endings I've seen in a very long time. Creighton is very, very good. Kind of like North Carolina, not deep at all. They play 6 to 7 guys a night. A lot of heavy minutes for your starters. I don't think they can make it very far in this tournament because of that, but they will get past Akron in round 1. And then you have Texas as the 7 seed versus what we found out tonight is Colorado State as the 10 seed. And Colorado State looked great against Virginia, which I expected them to. Virginia cannot score the basketball, but Colorado State is very, very, very good. And a team that I think could be a sleeper to make it very far in this tournament. I have them beating Texas in round 1. And then at the end there, you have Tennessee and St. Peter's. I like Tennessee in that matchup. I like Tennessee a lot in this tournament. Tennessee will move on to the round of 32. In the round of 32, in the Midwest region, we have Purdue and Utah State. And with the size that Utah State has, they have 3 guys over 6'10" that they can kind of throw at Purdue. And Purdue, as much, I'm not hating on Zach Edey. I'm not hating on Purdue, but they are so one-dimensional, and I just think it's going to hurt them once again. I have Utah State moving on in this matchup over Purdue. Gonzaga versus Samford. I think Graham Ike is the difference maker here in this matchup as well. Now, Samford does have enough size, like I said, in that Kansas matchup to kind of throw some bodies at Ike. And it's going to come down to what I've said all year long with Gonzaga, is if we're going to make a deep run, it's got to be Nolan Hickman. And I'm putting faith in him. So I think Gonzaga makes the Sweet 16. Oregon and Creighton. Like I said, Oregon has size. And Kalkbrenner being the star for Creighton. They have Shireman and Alexander as well. I think Oregon has enough size to slow down Kalkbrenner and be very physical with him. I like Oregon as the 11 seed to go on to the Sweet 16. And their coach is so good. He's been here in the tournament several times and made a few deep runs. So really like Oregon in that matchup. Colorado State and Tennessee. Now Isaiah Stevens for Colorado State is so good. He didn't even play great. His best game versus Virginia, and they won by 20. So he's a huge player in this matchup. I think Dalton Connect, being a senior transfer, is built for like this deep type of run for Tennessee, and Zakai Ziegler is now healthy for them in this tournament. I like Tennessee in this matchup, even though Colorado State, I'm not ruling them out by any means. The Sweet 16, we have Utah State and Gonzaga. The 8 seed Utah State and the 5 seed Gonzaga, and I think Great Ogabor and Graham Ike going at it is going to be must-watch TV. I think the guards for Gonzaga, I think we have better guards. I think Ryan Nembhard having some big-time experience with Creighton in the tournament in the past couple years. I like Gonzaga to make an Elite 8. And it's so interesting to me because this Gonzaga team is not by any means better than past years. They are way worse than what they've been these past few years, where they haven't made it as far as some people thought they would, including myself. But I just think we're placed in a part of the bracket in this region where it's very winnable. Like the options are McNeese, Samford, or Kansas without McCullough, Utah State, TCU, Purdue. Purdue's the worst of the 1 seeds. I think Gonzaga is placed in a very, very favorable spot in this bracket to make a deep run. So I have Gonzaga in the Elite 8. And then Oregon and Tennessee, I think Dalton Connect is the difference maker here, and the Oregon Ducks run comes to an end. I like Tennessee to move on to the Elite 8. And then between Tennessee and Gonzaga, Dalton Connect is better than anybody that we have at Gonzaga, and I have Tennessee moving on to the Final Four. So our Final Four has Auburn and North Carolina, and then Houston and Tennessee. Auburn and North Carolina. I will say in this matchup for my Final Four, it comes down to depth. Now, earlier in the show, I kept bragging about Auburn's top 10 in offensive efficiency and top 10 defensive efficiency. And I think I'm with that along with their depth being way more than what North Carolina has, I'm riding the number 4 seed Auburn Tigers all the way to the championship here for 2024. And then on the right side of your bracket, Houston and Tennessee. I just think Houston's defensive ability is so good. Tennessee's the better offense. Houston's the better defense. And I just think Houston's guards are so good. And Tennessee doesn't have that size that would cause a whole lot of trouble for Houston. I like Houston to go to the championship here, out of the South and Midwest region. And then my championship matchup is the number 4 seed Auburn Tigers and the number 1 seed Houston Cougars. And I do believe in this matchup I would be cheering for Auburn, but I do believe this is the year that the Houston Cougars get it done, finish the job. All you want to say. They've had those injuries in past years that kind of held them back. Got unlucky a couple of years. This is their year. The Houston Cougars are your 2024 NCAA champions for me here at A2Z Sports Talk. But it has already all begun with the first 4 games, and it's been exciting watching Colorado State and Virginia tonight, even though it was a blowout, and it was fun watching Howard and Wagner come down to the end. Tomorrow night's game's gonna be great with Montana State and Grambling, and Boise State and Colorado. And then it all begins. 16 games on Thursday, 16 games on Friday, 8 games on Saturday, 8 games on Sunday. So buckle in, guys. It's going to be a very entertaining week. If you have not followed already, make sure to follow us on all of our platforms, A2Z Sports Talk. And we will be seeing you guys very soon with updates and news about the tournament. It's going to be very, very fun this year, as it always is. And I hope you guys look forward to it just as much as I am right now. I absolutely cannot wait. I'm losing sleep over it, just waiting for it. So thank you guys for listening and watching, and we will see you guys this upcoming weekend, or probably next week even, because there's games nonstop. So next week we will be back probably on Monday with kind of an update of what the tournament looked like going into the Sweet 16 that next week. So we will see you guys then. Thanks.